Yeah. And I'm sure all of you heard Satyanarayana, like that. So from verse 11, we have started the Sankhya philosophy. Sankhya is the theoretical aspect of the philosophy, and this gives us the intellectual understanding of what the reality of life is. And this is covered in verses 11 to 38 of the second chapter that we are studying now. Sankhya gives us the wisdom of both absolute and relative aspects of life. Absolute aspect of life is self. Self with capital S. And this is Atma. And absolute aspect of life is eternal and everlasting. And this is what is Sri Krishna Bhagavan explaining to Arjuna in all these verses from 11 to 38. And we are going to learn more about this as we go on. So now we will begin with the study of verse 13. Samskrita, please.
Jai Gurudev. Dehinosmin yatha dehe kaumaram yauvanam jara tatha dehantara praptihi dhirastatra namuhyati. Dehinosmin yatha dehe kaumaram yauvanam jara tatha dehantara praptihi dhirastatra namushyati. As the dweller in this body passes into childhood, youth and age, so also does he pass into another body. This does not bewilder the wise. Jai Gurudev.
Jai Gurudev. The wise are not taken aback by changes of the body. The death of the body is like the change that takes place when children become grown up or when the young become old. Phenomenal changes continue to take place while the never changing reality of life, the dweller in the body, remains ever the same. It is not possible for a man who knows this to feel great concern about the death of the body, but even with this knowledge, he still feels heat and cold, pleasure and pain. How the situation should be met is explained in the next verse. These verses express the vital content of the wisdom of Sankhya. Jai Gurudev.
So in this verse, as I just said, the eternal and everlasting quality of absolute is described. And because self is eternal and everlasting, wise men, wise people, they do not become anxious about any changes in the relative because they are established in the reality that is everlasting. And this becomes more clear as we go on. And because they are established in this eternal reality, they are not concerned about a man dropping the body, and because they know that the Atma is eternal and Atma does not perish, and it continues in the next birth. And the scientific research on this verse shows that in the practitioners of transcendental meditation, there is increased intelligence. And this was conducted in secondary school students, and who showed the improvement after 14 weeks of practice of transcendental meditation. That's a pretty fast improvement. Okay, I'll stop now and take any questions. If anybody has any questions, please go ahead. Okay. If there are no questions, we will move on to the next shloka. Samskrita, please.
Jai Gurudev. Matra sparshastu kaunteya shitoshna sukha dukkhadah agama paino nitya tanti tikshasva bharata. Matra sparshastu kaunteya shitoshna sukha dukkhadah agama paino nityah tanti tikshasva bharata. Contacts of the senses with their objects, O son of Kunti, give rise to the experience of cold and heat, pleasure and pain. Transient, they come and go. Bear them patiently, O Bharata. Jai Gurudev.
Firmly established in the understanding of the unchangeable, the wise are never affected by the changing conditions of the body during life or after death. The experience of the objects of the senses and their effects, the experience of pleasure and pain are just phenomena which come and go. Here, Bhagavan Sri Krishna wants to show Arjuna that things which are not of a permanent nature should not weigh heavily. It is as if he were saying, take it lightly, for things will naturally go in the same way in which they came. Your life should be based on something which is of lasting nature. Arjuna, do not give importance to the consideration of the fleeting and impermanent phases of life. Raised to the understanding that the permanent reality of existence will continue to be, while that which is temporary will go on changing. So take life as it comes. This alone befits you, for you are called Bharata, the descendant of the great Bharata, who was established in the light and the reality of life. The result of remaining even-minded in pleasure and pain is shown in the following verse. Jai Gurudev.
Jai Gurudev.
Please go ahead, Sharmaji.
Yes. Jai Gurudev. Actually, in this verse, Bhagwan Krishna has started about the senses, that how the senses are also experiencing the unreality because things are changing. He has given the example of like touching the cold or hot. It gives pleasure or pain. So the senses are associated with the experience, and that experience is affecting the natural reality. The within us, there is the reality is that we are not affected by these cold or hot because they are always changing. So Bhagavan Krishna wants to tell Arjun that the reality never changes. That is, it will always remain the same. And so we should not be affected by the ups and downs or happiness or sorrow. Actually, I remember two examples, which one way Maharishi gave, that the sun always rises, but the clouds, they come and go. So the reality remains the same. Only the situations one may be feeling as if they are coming and going. So we should not be affected by that. And then that gets by experience of the reality. That gets by intellectually also, as Dr. Hemaji mentioned, that in the Sankhya, intellectually, Bhagwan Krishna is telling Arjun about the reality. Experience will come later, but this is more like in meditation also, we tell intellectually first we convince the person about the technique and then we teach the technique. So similarly here also, intellectually, Bhagwan Krishna is telling Arjun about the reality that you should not be affected by these changes. Another thing I remember is from the Gurudev's story, someone has written in a book that once Gurudev was having high fever due to malaria. Malaria is a fever in which people shiver. So Gurudev was shivering and someone was coming to visit, and the disciple said that that person is coming, so what should we do? Gurudev said, you should let him in and I will talk to him. So he just removed the blanket. He was shivering, but then he removed the blanket. He was normal. He spoke to the person, had the meeting, and when he come back again he was shivering and he was having the blanket. So that shows how much we really are with our reality. These senses or sensory, or actually the consciousness also changes, like the experience in dream, the experience in we can say waking consciousness, and then higher states of consciousness that also vary. So those variables will always be there. That is the non-real and not we ever changing. But what we are doing to do, Arjun's attention, Bhagwan Krishna is bringing on the reality, and he is saying that, oh Bharata, you should focus on the real nature and you should have bear patience. Patience means with regular intellectual understanding, he will be more confident of that reality. That is why the patience is required. In yoga, actually, the practice of yoga, it needs a lot of patience. And then with experience, it becomes the reality. So, and when we talk of scientific research, actually, in scientific research also, it says that there is more internal locus of control than non-meditating. It is showing that when a person is meditating, he is more well rested. He is more within his self. And those are indicated by the respiration rates go down. Respiration rates going down shows that one is more calm, one is more at rest. Similarly, the heart rate, they say the workload on the heart is reduced when one is meditating. And then also the spontaneous skin resistance. When someone is really having some anxiety, the skin resistance is lower. But when someone is calm, well rested, the skin resistance is higher. So it shows that the skin resistance also is indicating that one is more well rested, not just physically, but also at the level of consciousness, at the level of mind. And then the this plasma lactate also. What happens is that there is if there is some deficiency of oxygen, then one gets more rest. On one hand, the breath rate is going down, but on the other hand, the oxygen is being supplied to the blood, so the blood rate concentration also goes down. Similarly, it also shows the inner calm and tranquility. That again shows that person is having, we can say, more calmness within himself, and increased contentment, increased happiness, more balanced mood. Actually, when we say more balanced mood, they say samatvam yoga uchyate. Balance, actually, a balance of mind is yoga. Balance of nervous system is also yoga. So greater inner locus of control, increased self-sufficiency, and increased emotional stability and maturity. So emotional maturity also is seen through the practice of transcendental meditation, and all these attributes confirm that one experiences the reality when one is practicing transcendental meditation. Actually, what I feel is that when Maharishi wrote this commentary, scientific researches were not there that much as far as physics is concerned. Then when he was teaching the state of least excitation and then unified field, all those things. So if we work on this commentary from the present state of our, we can say, physics, modern physics, then one can really experience it more intellectually, that how at the level of silence, that is the field of all possibilities, and that is our own self. So that is what I feel, that when we are discussing, because in 1962, this latest theory had not come, but now it is more easy to understand this scientifically as well. So we can say commentary on Bhagavad Gita in the light of modern discoveries also can be done. Yes.
Yes.
Thank you, Dr. Sharmaji, for very beautiful explanation of this shloka. I really like the two examples you gave. One, when the sun is there, but we may not be able to see the sun always because of the clouds. It is so easy to understand with this example. And also you said, told us the story about Gurudev, how, even though he had shivering due to malaria, how he conducted his meeting with this person who came. So, and then you mentioned how patience and balanced state of mind and, all these qualities, they develop as we continue regular practice of meditation. That's the most important thing. It doesn't come overnight. We practice transcendental meditation regularly, and then gradually we develop all these qualities. And we are seeing the standing examples right in front of our eyes, Gurudev and, Maharishi. And when you were talking about patience, this thought came in my mind. I read somewhere that Shankaracharya said that if you don't have patience, you are no good. So when we are doing sadhana, we need patience. Some people start sadhana and then after 1 month or 6 months, they say, oh, I'm not seeing any progress, and what's happening, I'm not improving, or things like that. There are subtle changes, but you may not be able to notice. Like sometimes when you see a little baby daily, you don't see that the baby is, growing, but every day the baby is growing a little bit. So that's why patience is required in sadhana. So I liked all the points, you brought about. And also you mentioned how when Maharishi wrote a commentary on Bhagavad Gita, that was in mid-60s, there was no scientific research. But see how now everything that Maharishi said had been proven with scientific research. And, that's really so very great. We are so fortunate to have, Maharishi as our guru and all this knowledge that he had given us. Mataji, did you want to add anything, or we can move on, or we will take questions?
I think we'll move on, and then I'll
Okay.
be,
Okay. So the next shloka, you will be making the comments, so you can say. Any questions from the audience?
The pleasure and pain which we experience through our senses Basically, we need to understand they are all impermanent. They are not permanently coming. It's just an experience we have, so we need to endure through them. If the pleasure we experience is a pure pleasure, then there should be no pain attached to it. So maybe this is one way that we can, and that pleasure, what we say is only that Satchitananda, that eternal bliss only has no pain, but only pleasure.
That's true. And what happens in that situation is, sometimes we may be in a situation where there is some pain, but what happens is that pain doesn't bother you. And usually there is pain, we are very, unhappy, we are hurting and all that. But sometimes, even in situations when there is pain, it doesn't bother you. That is the experience of many people that I have heard.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yes.
Okay. All right. So if there are no other comments or questions, we'll move on to the next shloka. Samskrita, please.
Jai Gurudev. Yam hi navyathayantyete purusham purusharshabha samadukha sukham dhiram somrutattvaya kalpate. Yam hi navyathayantyete purusham purusharshabha samadukha sukham dhiram somrutattvaya kalpate. That man, indeed, whom these contacts do not disturb, who is even-minded, in pleasure and pain, steadfast, he is fit for immortality, O best of men. Jai Gurudev.
Jai Gurudev. Bhagwan Krishna emphasizes to Arjuna that once a man has become established in the understanding of the permanent reality of life, as explained in verse 13, his mind rises above the influence of pleasure and pain. Such an unshakable man passes beyond the influence of death and lives in the permanent phase of life. He attains eternal life. It is the Lord Bhagwan's purpose that Arjuna shall gain this state where he will be above all considerations in the relative field, even death and all problems of life and death. The unlimited state of the ocean is not affected either by the inflow of rivers or the process of evaporation. In the same way, a man established in the understanding of the unlimited abundance of absolute existence is naturally free from influence of the relative order. This is what gives him the status of immortal life. At the present time, it is generally found that people try to make a mood of equanimity in pleasure and pain, in loss and gain. They try to create a mood of equable behavior and unaffectedness while engaged in the diverse activities of the world. But trying to make a mood on the basis of understanding is simply hypocrisy. Many seekers become trapped in such an attitude. This will become clearer as we proceed. The understanding does not become right as a result of mood making. It is only necessary to understand the meaning of this and the previous three verses once in order to live the reality of the relationship between the inner eternal life and the outer ever-changing phases of existence. When once a man knows that he is king and the state belongs to him, he immediately begins to make use of his relationship with the state, begins to behave as a king. He is not required to cultivate kingship by practice and by constant thought about his position, just as a child is not required to remember always that his mother is his mother. He just knows it once and lives in relationship at all times. So simple is the path of understanding which results in freedom from bondage. The whole truth of life is that there is nothing substantial to bind the never changing to the ever changing sphere of life, and nothing to keep them bound together. It is only ignorance of the natural state of freedom existing between these spheres that results in binding them together. This ignorance and the bondage born of it keep life in motion. The inner aspect remaining never changing and the outer ever changing. The outer ever changing aspect continues eternally by virtue of the inner. Thus, life flows onward in the natural state of eternal freedom on the basis of ignorance. The knowledge contained in these verses, the wisdom of Sankhya, cuts asunder the bonds of ignorance and allows life to be in its natural state of eternal freedom. The following verses further expound this wisdom. Jai Gurudev.
Mataji will now make comments on this, and then I will cover scientific research on this. Mataji, please go ahead.
Jai Gurudev. You have said everything, Nana. It's so beautiful and it's so very clear. Whenever I think of, I would like to just share a couple of sentences. Because I have read many Bhagavad Gitas myself, and these were all by the enlightened beings, great saints of our time. But Maharishi Ji, when he brought out the Bhagavad Gita, just like he said, when he said Ayurveda is consciousness-based medicine, and, he brought this aspect to everything, consciousness-based education, consciousness-based health, consciousness-based this and that and all. And I would say Bhagavad Gita, the commentary given by Bhagavad Gita is consciousness-based Bhagavad Gita. I think it is fair enough to say that. Because if you look at the simple translation of the verses, almost in all the Bhagavad Gitas, the verse, the word translation of the verse will almost be the same, 90% at least. But it is a commentary. And how one enlightened being is looking at it under the circumstances where he is involved. If he is dealing with people who are needing help, how to do their, manage their life, their work, their, all those things and their evolution. And that, the knowledge comes out in that fashion. But Maharishi's focus was on enlightenment. Absolutely, Maharishi's focus was always on enlightenment and evolution. So in this Bhagavad Gita, naturally, he brought it out as consciousness-based Gita, trying to, bring this understanding that you are the consciousness, and with this knowledge, you can begin to rise in consciousness and ultimately attain the perfection and the salvation. So this is the highest. That is why some people, when they read Maharishi's Bhagavad Gita, they might find it difficult because they are not transcending. Yeah. So, but still the empirical knowledge can be understood. The empirical knowledge can be understood. But the experiential knowledge will only come with the transcendence. So some people, keep on asking me, Mataji, why Maharishi's books are not sold in lakhs and crores, like other Bhagavad Gitas. Then I say it is a selective audience. He has gone for people who want to rise in consciousness. He's bringing out this is for a specific purpose. And so those who can group into that, then naturally will gain it. So I will just read this, these verses once again. Contacts of the senses with their objects, O son of Kunti, give rise to the experience of cold and heat, pleasure and pain. This is verse number 14. And then this verse number 15 is, that man indeed, whom these contacts do not disturb, who is even-minded in pleasure and pain, steadfast, he is fit for immortality, O best of men. Then the following verse, which, Sharmaji is going to talk about. The unreal has no being, the real never ceases to be. The final truth about them both has thus been perceived by the seers of ultimate reality. There is a common thread with all of this. That's why, I try to put this together. Now, coming back to the verse that is allocated to me, it says, that man indeed, whom these contacts do not disturb, who is even minded in pleasure and pain, steadfast, he is fit for immortality. So now you can just, close your eyes and listen, because there are three important things here. First of all, there is this individual who is called the Jiva, whom we refer to as the Jiva. And then there is the context that he is being exposed to. And then there is the other spectrum of this Jiva becoming the Paramatma in order to experience the immortality. So these three have to be properly understood in this verse. When they are properly understood, then a lot of it is gained, because Sankhya is really bringing the knowledge of the self and the non-self, bringing it the union of the self and the non-self, and then, living the life from the vantage of this union, which is the Brahman, or the being the self alone, and experiencing the whole of the life. So when Bhagavan says that these contacts come and go, bear them patiently, O Bharata. And he says, O best of men, when you see an ocean, you see the unlimited state of the ocean, and it is not affected either by the inflow of rivers or the process of evaporation. So again, Bhagavan is reminding here, Arjuna, you are the ocean, you are not the wave. Don't think, that you are being affected like a wave. Try to remain as the ocean and not be affected by all these waves. In the same way, a man established in the understanding of the unlimited abundance of absolute existence is naturally free from the influence of the relative order, and this is what gives him the status of immortal life. So, when man attains this unshakable state, he passes beyond the influence of death and lives in the permanent phases of life, and he attains eternal life, or what we say, immortality. Now, why is Bhagavan saying all this to Arjuna? His purpose is that Arjuna should gain this state. Arjuna is the seeker. As just like us, we all like seekers. He should gain this state where he will be above all considerations. in the relative field, including death and all problems of life and death. So here Bhagavan is saying the whole truth of life is that there is nothing substantial to bind the never-changing to the ever-changing sphere. So there is nothing to keep them bound together, to keep them in attachment or in bondage. And Bhagavan further says, know that to be indeed indestructible, by which all this is pervaded. What is it that is indeed indestructible? That you are the Atma. And none can work the destruction of this immutable being. Now, here the omnipresent being is also referred to as Paramatma, and the spirit within is referred to as Jiva. And some even say Jivatma. So when one says the inner spirit, it may be understood, it should be understood in two ways. It has two components. The first is the Jiva, which is the ego, together, which is the ego, which is you. You say, I, together with the mind and the senses. And the second, which is the individualized aspect of the cosmic existence. So this Jiva has these two components. One with the ego, together with the mind and the senses. And the second, which is the individualized aspect of the cosmic existence. So Jiva then is the individualized cosmic existence or individual Atma within the body. And when these limitations are removed, when these limitations of the body and the mind and senses and all are removed, then Jiva is Atma alone. It is the transcendental being or the Paramatma. So this should be clearly understood. If death is inevitably going on, even during what is said to be life, death is also constantly happening. Nothing new seems to happen when one body dies and another body is taken. So Bhagavan is saying, there is no point in lamenting the death of the body, and even less lamenting it in anticipation, thinking that you are going to die. So again, the dweller in the body, which is a Jivatma, is the same as the Atma, the eternal being, and it is indestructible already, and it is immortal already. So when its limitations are removed, Jiva is Atma, the transcendental being. So when the individuality of the Jiva and the universality of the transcendental self, the Atma, they become united and found together on the one level of life, then this is called Brahman, the all-embracing cosmic life. So finally, we can conclude by saying the individual Jiva in its essence is Atma, and hence is eternal, imperishable, and infinite. We have to come to the conclusion. Now to this, let me add just a few more words. We find in general that the body and mind are continually changing, continuously, minute to minute, moment to moment. And there are also this something which we call the expression of the cells in the body. These are also ceasing to, they are dying, they're changing, and they are getting recreated. The spirit, the Jiva, remains the same throughout our life, with no change despite all the changes in the body, mind, and system. So the Jivatma, which we call it, as the Jiva, remains the same. So whatever changes is going on, it is the same. And it is also a common experience when you go to the Himalayas and you see some of the sadhus or ascetics. They seem almost naked without even wearing footwear, and minimal clothing or no clothing, especially the Naga sannyasis and all that. And they seem to bear this extreme cold without any discomfort. So the process that we perceive or receive information through our five senses, then it gets analyzed and there is introspection with your mind and its samskaras. And you respond in a certain way. Everyone responds in a certain way because the mind is different, the samskaras are different. And how you respond is the, so this is called the cognition of what you're experiencing. And now this changes with transcendence. What you are now will keep changing with transcendence. So with the rise in the consciousness, there is natural and spontaneous controlling of the senses. What does this mean? That means, the senses are losing the interest in the sense objects. The senses are more attracted to the self, and then that sphere, and they're losing the attraction to their contacts, sense objects, right? So naturally, the result will be varying as the consciousness is rising. As the consciousness is rising, it will be, the senses will respond in it. Will respond differently to the sense objects, contacts. So the whole of the loop is, you are transcending. There is the Sravanam, you're also listening to this knowledge. There is the contemplation, and there is the existence, Mananam, and then the Dhyasana. And these are all the important aspects for a seeker to rapidly progress and gain this experiential knowledge called Brahma Vidya. Now it is said in the Upanishads that through avidya, the ignorance of yourself, you cross beyond mortality. This is needed. You need to be in avidya. Only when you are in avidya, you will say, I want to be on the other side of the samsara. Only when you are unhappy, you say, oh, I want happiness. Only when there is turmoil, you say, I want peace. So it's a natural progression there, that in order to progress, you progress through avidya only. And this will take you beyond mortality, beyond death, and beyond change. So through vidya, once you have gained the self, the knowledge of yourself, then you taste immortality. You know that now you are immortal. Nothing can destroy you. So the jiva has always been the self, but somehow it became identified with the body and the whole aspect of the life of samsara. So the I got mixed up with mine and I. So this I and mine arose from this ego. So when this individual I awakens fully to its original identity, then it understands and knows its immortality. So now let us see, what does transcendence do? So the whole practice of transcendence is just for this, to awaken one's own immortal reality. And what is this practice? The practice means we go beyond that with which we have been identified with all the time. And what is it that we are identified with all the time? Is the relative ever-changing phenomena. And we transcend that, and we transcend that, and we transcend that. And as Maharishi Ji has said, with time, the taste of transcendental consciousness begins to be a little more lasting, and more lasting. And gradually, the long identification of the boundaries of the body and the surroundings begin to dissolve. So all these impressions that we call memories, we call samskaras, we call vasanas or impressions, whatever, they all begin to melt and fade. So this practice of sadhana is just for the sake of transcending change. We are transcending change. So again, it is for transcending change. Through change, you transcend change. Through change, you transcend change until you come to the changeless. And that is why it is said, through ignorance, you cross beyond the field of change. Through ignorance, because enlightenment is a reality and ignorance is a mirage. So the only way you can know immortality is by the virtue of being immortal. Just like self knows only the self. You can't know the self by the mind. The self has to know the self. Self has to reveal the self. So the only way of knowing the immortality is when you have experienced that immortality as the self. So finally, I would just say, you transcend until all the boundaries of the body and the surroundings begin to dissolve. And then these impressions begin to melt. And then how the senses react and what is their impact will be different. I would just say, add one more word to it, like how one reacts to the pain and the suffering and the agony or the sorrow and all those things. These are normal things we all go through. When one experiences the self and one is established in the self 24 hours, then the self is always there. So even if there is pain, the self is also there. The bliss of the self remains, although the pain of being cut or pain of being burnt or pain of anything will also be there, because you're dealing with nerve endings and senses and all that. But this is not overshadowed. This bliss of the self is not overshadowed. You may be suffering because you have lost somebody very dear to you. You may be crying and you may be suffering, but still this is also not overshadowed. The implication of this, why I'm saying this is, like even at the same time of the death, when you're going through the process, this is not overshadowed. You may be going through some pain and some suffering through that process, but this is not overshadowed. If one can remember, takeaway point, if one can remember that, then it is worth gaining the self, being the self, and travel all the way to be immortal. Okay, Jai Gurudev, Jai Gurudev.
Jai Gurudev. Thank you, Mataji, for this beautiful explanation of this shloka. And all these points we are going to study again in verse 18. In the commentary, Maharishi made it very clear. So we will be pondering over these beautiful points, because that's how this knowledge evolves. There are many verses in which the ultimate reality is described, that there are two aspects of life, absolute and relative. This point keeps coming again and again until it really sinks into our awareness. And I thought that the last line in the commentary, which Maharishi said, thus life flows onward in the natural state of eternal freedom on the basis of ignorance. There is a Sanskrit word for it, lesha avidya. On the basis of that, life goes on. Maharishi did not mention the Sanskrit word in here, but he talked about it in other tapes. And another point I like that you brought out is how we identify ourselves with the body. And that's where the problem comes. That's why we become egoistic, we get puffed up. And that's why when you are in difficult situations of pain, the pain hurts because we are identifying with the body. And now with the regular practice of transcendental meditation, instead of identifying with the body, we identify with Atma. So again, this point comes again and again. And the scientific research also shows that in the practitioners of transcendental meditation, they show decreased physiological stress, as indicated by reduced skin conductance during performance of a task. Sharmaji had mentioned about that, the skin resistance and all that. So this is another verification from the scientific aspect that when you are in a difficult situation, like pain or any other difficult situation, you are not throwing a fit and you are not completely frustrated and stressed out to the point where you are not able to handle it. So what happens? The stress is less, and then you are able to handle the situation in a much, much better way. So this again shows the importance of regular practice of transcendental meditation. Any questions or any other comments? Please go ahead. Otherwise, we will move on to the next one. Okay, next shloka, please. Is Sridhana reading English now? First Samskrita and then English.
Jai Gurudev. Nasato vidyate bhavaha, na bhavo vidyate sataha, उभयोरपि दृष्टोऽन्तः त्वनयोस्तत्त्वदर्शिभिः नासतो विद्यते भावः नाभावो विद्यते सतः उभयोरपि दृष्टोऽन्तः त्वनयोस्तत्त्वदर्शिभिः The unreal has no being. The real never ceases to be. The final truth about them both has thus been perceived by the seers of ultimate reality. Jai Gurudev.
Jai Gurudev. The indestructibility of human essence is explained here. Ultimate reality has been defined as that which never changes. Opposed to it is the unreal, which is ever changing. For clearly, that which always changes has no substance, no real existence. Here, in this verse, Bhagavan Sri Krishna brings Arjuna to see the reality at the basis of the multiplicity of creation. This is the next step, following logically upon that of the previous verse. Here, the seer of truth perceives clearly the difference between the permanent, never changing absolute state of life and its ever-changing states of diversified phenomenal existence. It is this which gives him that stability and heightened state of consciousness by which he raises above the binding influence of activity in the phenomenal world. Arjuna is being led step by step towards the vision of a realized man. Jai Gurudev.
Sharmaji,
Gurudev.
please go
Yes,
ahead.
Jai Gurudev. Actually, we have already talked a lot about the reality and the changing things, the non-real. Here also, the same thing has been explained in different words. Basically, it is asat, which has no reality. Asat means that which is not real, that is asat, and that is ever changing. So it has no reality. It does not remain. But on the other hand, the sat is there, which always exists, like the Atma, the universal self, that remains the same. So there is no bhava in asat, and there is no bhava in asat, and there is bhava in sat, because sat is always continuing. And anyone who has seen the reality that this superficial world, it is ever changing, and the reality is the non-changing reality. So he is even minded, and as we were talking of from the last verse also, that Jeev Brahma Napara, the individual self is one with the universal self, and then one is not binded by the asat. One remains in the sat. So the same thing we can say is said in this verse also, basically establishing the reality. The ever-changing is unreal, and reality at the basis of multiplicity of creation. The seer of the truth perceives the non-changing reality as the basis of ever-changing. Anyone, we say seer means the one who really cognizes, ratio mantra drishtare. So a person who can see the reality, the perceiver sees that everything is superficial, is changing, but I am really there. And one more important fact is that this all change also is on the basis of that reality. This all ever changing is also superficial change, also has that reality within. So it on the basis of that reality, this change or unreal has come up. So the Tattvadarshi, any person who has seen the reality will see that the basis is the reality and that is my own self. And the scientific research also shows that the field independence, when we say field independence, it means whatever is happening in this world, very changing are there, but we are established in our own self and we are not affected. Our action is not affected by the superficial changes. So the practice of transcendental meditation shows that we have increased field independence, growth of a stable internal frame of reference. And that internal frame of reference is that reality. Improved cognitive flexibility, faster processing of cognitively complex information, improved comprehension, and improved concentration. This is a very special observation from transcendental meditation. What happens is when we try to comprehend, we lose the focus. And when we want to focus, we lose the comprehension. So there are two opposites. But with the practice of transcendental meditation, one is able to comprehend the unbounded as well as focus on the point and the infinity. Both are comprehended by that state of consciousness. So that also is proved, indicating broader comprehension and increased ability to focus attention, increased mental clarity and wakefulness. Yo jagartam richa kamyante. Actually, all these richas, anyone who is awake, richas actually seek that consciousness which is awake. So one becomes more awakened through the practice of transcendental meditation. So that is confirmed. But basically here we are only talking of Sankhya, means intellectually understanding about the reality. And these experiences are of the meditators. So that we are, because it should not be, Maharishi has clearly mentioned, it should not be mood making. If the king has to be really live like a king, not think that I am a king. So that is, I think, that will suffice. In case there are questions, then we can discuss.
Thank you, Dr. Sharmaji. And you brought out the field independence, the scientific research very nicely. When we are seeing at something, we don't lose the vision of the big picture. So we see the big picture, and yet we are able to see what is going on at the point level. So you are in the boundaries, but you don't lose the vision of the unbounded. So it's very beautiful point that is brought out, which scientific research has proven, that even though we are in the relative, we are not losing sight of absolute. We are established in it. And in the previous verse, Maharishi said, a child knows that, his mother is his mother. He doesn't have to remember every time that, oh, she's my mother, she's my mother. So like that, this reality of being established in the absolute is there, even though we are in the boundaries. So you brought it out very nicely. That's very nice. Any questions from the audience? Please go ahead and ask. Or any comments?
This reminds of the beautiful Sanskrit phrase we have, Brahma Satyam Jagat Mithya.
Right. That's what Dr. Sharmaji had mentioned. Jivo Brahma Satyam Jagat Mithya, Jivo Brahmaiva Naparaha. Shankaracharya said that in one of his works, and this is quoted in Viveka Chudamani right in the beginning. That is the essence of Viveka Chudamani that Shankaracharya had written. So Jivatma is nothing but Brahman. And with our practice of transcendental meditation, we get there, gradually. So very good. Anybody else wants to add anything? Otherwise, we will move on. We will now do 10 minutes group meditation, and then we will have Bhagavad Gita recitation of chapter 2, first half. And then we will celebrate Dr. Bhuvnesh Sharmaji's birthday. We will sing for him. We will have Vedic Ashirvad. Then Meenakshi will sing a birthday song in Sanskrita. And Nilimp Ji, Acharya Nilimp Tripathi Ji is here. He will say a few words. So we will have this celebration after our group meditation. So anybody else wants to say anything? Otherwise, we will move on to group meditation. Okay, let's sit comfortably, close eyes, and begin to meditate. Jai Gurudev. Take a minute or so and slowly open the eyes. Slowly open the eyes. Now I would like to request our Vedic Pandits to recite first half of the second chapter, please. Manishji and Ghanshamji, please go ahead.
नारायणेन स्वयं व्यासेन कृता पुराणमुनिना मध्ये महाभारतम् अद्वैतामृतवर्षिणीं भगवतीम् अष्टादशाध्यायिनीम् अम्ब त्वामनुसन्दधामि भगवत् गीते भवे द्वेषणीम् यं ब्रह्मा वरुणेन्द्ररुद्रमरुता स्तुवन्ति देव्यैस्तवैर्वेदैः साङ्गपदक्रमोपनिषदैः गायन्ति यं सारा ध्यानावस्थितगतेन मनसा पश्यन्ति यं योगिनो यस्यान्तं न विदुषुरासुरगणा देवाय तस्मै नमः।
Jai
ॐ
Gurudev.
श्री परमात्मने नमः।
Jai Gurudev. Jai Gurudev. Please keep one audio on mute, please.
जी दीदी।
Okay.
ॐ श्री परमात्मने नमः। अथ द्वितीयो अध्यायः। संजय उवाच ॐ तं तथा कृपयाविष्टम् अश्रुपूर्णाकुलेक्षणम् विषेदन्तमिदं वाक्यम् उवाच मधुसूदनः। श्रीभगवानुवाच कुतस्त्वं कश्मलमिदं विषमे समुपस्थितम् अनार्यजुष्टमश्वर्ग्यम् अकीर्तिकरमूर्जना क्लैव्यं मास्मगमः पार्थ नेतत्त्वय्युपपद्यते क्षत्रं हृदय दौर्बल्यं त्यक्त्वा तिष्ठ परन्तप अर्जुन उवाच कथं भीष्ममहं संख्ये द्रोणं च मधुसूदन इषुभिः प्रतियोत्स्यामि पूजार्हा वरिसूदन गुहो न हत्वा हि महानुभावान् श्रेयो भोक्तुं भैक्ष्यमपि हरोके हत्वार्थकामास्तु कुरु न वा भुञ्जेय भोगान् रुधिरप्रदग्धान् न च तद्विद्मः कतरन्नो गरीयो यद्वा जयेम यदि वा नो जयेयुः यानेव हत्वा न जजेविषामास्ते वस्थिता प्रमुखे धार्तराष्ट्राः कार्पण्यदोषोपहतः स्वभावा पृच्छामि त्वां धर्मसम्भोढचेताः यच्छ्रेयास्यान्निश्चितं ब्रूहि तन्मे शस्यस्तेऽहं साधिमां त्वां प्रपन्नम् न हि प्रपश्यामि ममानुपद्याद्यक्षोकमुक्षोषणमिन्द्रियाणाम् अवाप्य भूमा वसपत्नमृद्धं राज्यं सुराणामपि चाधिपत्यम् संजय उवाच एवमुक्त्वा हृषीकेशं गुडाकेश परन्तपः न योत्स्य इति गोविन्द मुक्त्वा तूष्णीं बभूवः तमुवाच हृषीकेश प्रसन्न भारत सेनयोर्भयोर्मध्ये विषीदन्तमिदं वचः श्रीभगवान् उवाच असोच्यानन्वसोचस्त्वं प्रज्ञावादांश्च भाषसे गतासु न गतासूंश्च नानुशोचन्ति पण्डिताः न त्वेवाहं जातु नासं न त्वं नेमे जनाधिपाः न चैव न भविष्यामः सर्वे वयमतः परम् देहिनोऽस्मिन् यथा देहे कौमारं यौवनं जरा तथा देहान्तरप्राप्तिर्धीरस्तत्र न मुह्यते मात्रा स्पर्शास्तु कौन्तेय शीतोष्णसुखदुःखदाः आगमापायनो नित्यास्तांस्तितिक्षस्व भारत यं हि न व्यथयन्ते ते पुरुषं पुरुषर्षभः समदुःखसुखं धीरं सोवृत्तत्वय कल्पते नासतो विद्यते भावो नाभावो विद्यते सदः उभयोरपि दृष्टान्तस्तनयोस्तत्त्वसर्जिभिः अविनाशी तु तद्विद्धि येन सर्वमिदं ततम् विनाशमव्ययस्यास्य न कश्चित् कर्तुमर्हति अन्तवन्त इमे देहा नित्यशोक्ताः शरीरिणः अनाशिनो प्रमेयस्य तस्माद्युध्यस्व भारत य एन वित्त इत्तारं यश्चैनं मन्यते हतम् अभौतौ न विजानीतो नायं हन्ति न हन्यते न जायते म्रियते पदाका चिन्नायं भूत्वा भविता वा न भूयः अजो नित्याशाश्वतोऽयं पुराणो न हन्यते हन्यमाने शरीरे वेदा विनाशिनं नित्यं येनमजमव्ययम् कथं स पुरुषः पार्थ कं घातयति हन्तिकम् वासांसि जीर्णानि यथा विहाय नामानि गृह्णानि सनोपराणि तथा शरीराणि विहाय जीर्णान्यन्यानि शय्यानि नवानि देहि नैनं छन्दन्ति शस्त्राणि नैनं दहति पावकः न चैनं क्लेदयन्त्यापो न शोषयति मारुतः अच्छेद्योऽयमदाह्योऽयं क्लेद्यो शोष्य एव च नित्यः सर्वगतः स्थाणो रचलोऽयं सनातनः अव्यक्तोऽयमचिन्तोऽयम् अविकार्योऽयमुच्यते तस्मादेवं वेदत्वैनं नानुशोचितुमर्हसि अथ चैनं नित्यजातं नित्यं वा मन्यसे मृतम् तथापि त्वां महाबाहो नैवं शोचितुमर्हसि जातस्य हि ध्रुवो मृत्युं ध्रुवं जन्म मृतस्य च तस्मात् परिहारेऽर्थे न त्वं शोचितुमर्हसि अव्यक्तादीनि भूतानि व्यक्तमध्यानि भारत अव्यक्तनिधनान्येव तत्र का परिदेवना आश्चर्यवत् पश्यति कश्चिदेनम् आश्चर्यवत् वदति तैव चान्यः आश्चर्यवच्चैनमन्यः शृणोति श्रुत्वं पेनं वेद चैव कश्चित् देहे नित्यम् अवध्योऽयं देहे सर्वस्य भारत तस्मात् सर्वाणि भूतानि न त्वं शोचितुमर्हसि स्वधर्ममपि चावेक्ष्य न बकिंपतुमर्हसि धर्माद्धियुद्धात् श्रेयोऽन्यच्छत्रियस्य न विद्यते यदृच्छया चोपपन्यं स्वर्गद्वारमपामृतम् सुखिनः क्षत्रियः पार्थ लभन्ते युद्धमीदृशम् अथ चेत्त्वमिमं धर्म्यं संग्रामं न करिष्यति ततः स्वधर्मं कीर्तिं च हित्वा पापमवाप्स्यसि अकीर्तिं चापि भूतानि कथयिष्यन्ति ते व्ययाम् संभावितस्य चाकीर्तिर्मरणादिरुच्यते भयाद्रणाद् परतं मस्यन्ते त्वां महारथाः एषा चष्टं महामतो एषा चष्टं बहुमतो भूत्वा यास्यसि लाघवम् अवाच्य वादांश्च बहून् वदिष्यन्ति तवाहिताः निन्दन्तस्तव सामर्थ्यं ततो दुःखतरं नु किम् ॐ
आखिरी श्लोका पढ़ना 72.
जी 72
Yes.
ॐ एषा ब्राह्मी स्थितः पार्थानैनं प्राप्य मुह्यते स्थित्वा श्यामन्तकालेऽपि ब्रह्मनिर्वाणमिच्छति ॐ तत्सदिति श्रीमद्भगवद्गीतासु उपनिषत्सु ब्रह्मविद्यायां योगशास्त्रे श्रीकृष्णार्जुन संवादे
Jai Gurudev. Thank you. Now we will celebrate Dr. Bhuvanesh Sharmaji's birthday. Please give a Vedic blessing, Manish ji and Ghanshyam ji.
हरे ओम मां बसवात चक्षुरत बसवातो मुख बसवातो बाहोरत बसवात सपात संभावयां धामाति सम्पाततरर्धयावा भूमि जनयन् देव एकः ॐ श्रीर्वर्चस्वमायश्चमारोग्यमाभिधाक्षो भवानं महीयते धनं धान्यं पशुं बहुकीर्तिलाभं तत्संवत्सरं दीर्घमायुः हरिः ॐ
Jai Gurudev. Thank you. Meenakshi, Janmadinamidam, please.
Jai Gurudev. Janmadinamidam ai priya bhrata Janmadinamidam ai priya bhrata Shantanotu te sarvada mudam Shantanotu te sarvada mudam प्रार्थयामहे भवशतायुषी प्रार्थयामहे भवशतायुषी ईश्वर सदा त्वं च रक्षतु ईश्वर सदा त्वं च रक्षतु पुण्यकर्मणा कीर्तिमर्जया पुण्यकर्मणा कीर्तिमर्जया जीवनं तव भवतु सार्थकम् जीवनं तव भवतु सार्थकम् भवतु सार्थकम् भवतु सार्थकम्. Oh brother, may this birthday of yours bring in auspiciousness and happiness. We pray that you enjoy 100 beautiful years of life, and may the Lord always protect you. May you earn fame by your virtuous actions, and may your life be fulfilling. Jai Gurudev.
Jai Gurudev. We want to wish a very happy birthday to Dr. Bhuvanesh Sharma ji. We are very fortunate to have him with us. And we are happy that he's sharing the beautiful knowledge that he got from Maharishi ji. He was with Maharishi ji for 33 years. So you can imagine how rich his experience is. Now I would like to request Acharya Nilimp Tripathi ji to say a few words and wish our very dear Dr. Bhuvanesh Sharma a very happy birthday. Please go ahead.
पूजनीय प्रोफेसर भुवनेश शर्मा जी के श्री चरण कमलों में प्रणाम करते हैं। महर्षि महेश योगी वैदिक विश्वविद्यालय के यशस्वी कुलपति के रूप में आपने विश्व में जो यश पताका फहराई है, उससे संपूर्ण विश्व महर्षि जी के इस उदात्त ज्ञान से परिचित हो रहा है। आपकी सरलता, स्वाभाविकता, सहजता, पवित्रता और भगवत परायणता से हम सबका अंतःकरण अत्यंत आनंदित है, प्रफुल्लित है, हमारा रोम रोम पुलकित है। आपके सानिध्य में हम दिव्य ज्ञान, महर्षि जी का आशीर्वाद अनुभव कर पाते हैं। आपके प्रति अत्यंत विनत भाव से भगवान से ये प्रार्थना करते हैं कि पश्येम शरदः शतम्, जीवेम शरदः शतम्, शृणुयाम शरदः शतम्, प्रब्रवाम शरदः शतम्, अदीनाः स्याम शरदः शतम्, भूयश्च शरदः शतात्। शुक्ल यजुर्वेद की संहिता के 36वें अध्याय के इस 24वें मंत्र में सूर्य नारायण से हम यही प्रार्थना कर रहे हैं कि सदा सदा आपकी यशः कीर्ति फैलती रहे, सदा आपका मुख कमल खिला रहे और मंजुल कीर्ति का, ज्ञान का अनंत विस्तार करते रहें। हम आपके श्री चरण कमलों में प्रणाम निवेदित करते हैं और अनंत शुभकामनाएं अर्पित कर रहे हैं। जय गुरुदेव, जय महर्षि।
Jai Gurudev. Acharya Tripathi ji, you spoke so beautifully. I'm very pleased to, how nicely you wished Dr. Bhuvanesh Sharma ji a very happy birthday. And now I would like to request Dr. Bhuvanesh Sharma ji to, say a few words, please.
Actually, I have not much to say. I will just say thanks to Dr. Hema ji and Kritika ji, who was saying the wishes in Sanskrit and English, and also Nilim ji, who is very dear to me. Actually, we have been together many times and still we are together, and it is really a joy to have all the enlightened wishes. I will say that you all have given it. I am really very fortunate to have all the Maharishi's blessing through all of you. I really feel that I am getting all the blessings from Maharishi with all your wishes. And I wish that in Maharishi once was saying that in the foot of the elephant, all the other food comes, because the elephant foot is big. So all the other animals, they can put their foot and it will be inside. So similarly, in the Maharishi's wishes, all our wishes are there. And so our wish only is to fulfill the wishes of Maharishi, the Sankalpa of Maharishi, and we'll continue working for that. And it is our joy. And once again, thanks to the whole group and especially Dr. Hemaji, who has organized all this celebration. So thank you all. Jai Gurudev, Jai Mahesh.
Jai Gurudev. It's our pleasure to celebrate, your birthday with us. We are very fortunate to have you on our team to bring Mahari's Gita knowledge to the whole world. Thank you, Sharmaji.
Actually, the birthday, even though by date-wise it was 23rd, but by lunar calendar it is Panchami. So actually Panchami is today. So that way it is also right that we are celebrating this today also. Yes.
Yeah. From Jyotish point of view, the nakshatra birthday, tithi birthday is more accurate. So we are doing the right thing. So thank you very much. Now all of you can come on camera and, say Jai Gurudev. Thank you all for joining. And we will meet again next Friday. I'm traveling, so next Friday I will try to be there. I will try my best to be there. Otherwise, Dr. Bhuvanesh Sharmaji will be there and with all the other team. So all of you can come on cameras now and say Jai Gurudev.
Jai Gurudev.
Jai Gurudev.
Jai Gurudev. Thank you all for joining. It was nice to be with you and discuss Gita knowledge.
Thank you. Jai Gurudev.
Jai Gurudev.
Jai Gurudev.
Jai Gurudev, Bella and Bani is there.
Thank you, ma'am.
Jai Gurudev, Bella, and Jai Gurudev to Happy Girl. And thank you, Kritika, for singing so beautifully. And a special thanks to Acharya Nilimpuji for the beautiful birthday wishes he gave with the quotes from the Vedas. And special thanks to Manishji and Ghanshamji also for giving Vedic Ashirvad to Dr. Bhuvanesh Sharmaji. Okay. So we will end the meeting now. Sachin, you can end the meeting, please.